This is Scott Walker.
And this is Steve Rodgers of Into the Blue.
And we're on Tom Rowland's podcast.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. Got a great one for you today. I was able to sit down with a couple of people that are probably the most popular request when I ask for suggestions on the next guest. I get a lot of suggestions for the hosts of Into the Blue television, my friends Scott Walker and Steve Rodger. And, that's a show that we produce, and it seems like it would be very, very easy for me to get time with these guys, and I get plenty of time with the guys. But the problem is that usually we're fishing, 10, 12 hours, and pretty much the last thing they want to do is sit down and talk to me anymore. So it's been very difficult to get them pinned down, but found a little time, and I did get them pinned down. And we also have another of our crew, Jake Perry, who does our underwater. He joins us on this one, and we had a very cool story that happened that Jake was a part of, so you get to hear his perspective on that. A swordfish attacked him in the water, seriously. And if you don't know about swordfish, they're no joke at all. And we actually got very lucky on this one. Nobody got hurt. So you'll hear that story, and you'll also hear the origins of both Steve and Scott, how they got to be where they are today and the path that led them here. So I am excited to bring you my friends, Steve Rodger and Scott Walker of Into the Blue. So here we are. You guys ever done a podcast before?
Nah, this be my first, buddy.
What do you think? Isn't it as great as you
Just
imagined?
as exciting as I thought it was when you were chasing me around a month ago.
This is my first one, too. But it feels just like a radio show, and I've done plenty of those.
Yeah, it is. What about you, Jake?
Now he's got
expect more of that.
Okay. I get it. As soon as you hit the record button, clammed up.
He did.
Earlier, he wouldn't shut up.
He did. Okay. All right. Well, so how did you guys, so many people want to know how you got started with your fishing career. Who wants to go first? Scott?
No problem. I simple as that. I was needed. My aunt and uncle had a boat and needed someone to wash it on weekends. So I got to go to the beach on weekends.
Where is it? Where is this?
That'd be Ocean City, Maryland. And we'd take the boat out on a Friday, Saturday. Then I'd spend all day Sunday washing it for them while they get the beach house closed up, and then back to school on Mondays. And by the time I was 14 years old, I started washing boats and then blue fishing. And then that wasn't enough of a challenge for us. And then it was tuna fishing, marlin fishing, and traveling the world. It was really that simple.
What did it look like to go from doing it as a hobby or something that you just love to do doing it for pay?
It had to happen. I couldn't be on the water enough. So to satisfy my needs to be on the water all day, I had to start a charter business. Just so that, you just can't fish on weekends when you get the bug. So,
right. Where did the charter business start for you?
Well, as much as we fished in Maryland, it was still a short season. So we would put the boat away in the Chesapeake for the winter, and then my aunt and uncle would travel to different places for their winter vacations. And we ended up in Duck Key, Florida, at the Indies Inn, which is now Hawks Cay Resort. They fell in love with it and decided, let's leave the boat in ice up there in Chesapeake Bay when we can move it down here, live on it, and fish all winter long on Christmas break, spring break, and stuff like that. On a side note, I was quite a basketball player in high school, but I could never stay for the camps. So I ended up just playing high school and AAU level because I was never available for what the coaches wanted. But fishing was more important to me. Went from weekends and vacations in the Keys to building a home, and then started charter fishing right there when Indies Inn transferred to Hawks Cay Resort. They needed all new boats, nice boats, and we were there, right place, right time.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
And then you had your charter service there until what, a couple of years ago?
Until just 3 years ago. Started with my aunt and uncle with the boats were called the Huntress. And when they retired from fishing and left the Keys to move to another part of Florida, I stayed and then started finding jobs in Maryland with people that were more than willing to bring their boat to the Keys for the winter. A nice place for the boat to be safe, for me to run it a little bit, and for them to have a nice place to come catch fish in the dead of winter up in Maryland.
That's cool. And then on the other side of the coin, you two guys, conch, born and raised.
Perry and I, yeah, yep. What do you want, the story?
Yeah.
You ready for the story?
Yeah,
Right.
hit me with it.
I'm going to hit you with it. So, I guess for my start, it was the fact that my dad was a school teacher, 35 years, QS High School. My mom worked at a credit union, and I don't think we were extremely well off, but we had one car, they share. My dad used to ride me to school on the back of his bike, and he'd drop me off, and he'd go to teach at the high school. And, through that, my father would subsidize his income through commercial diving for lobster and spearing fish and, fishing for yellowtail snapper. And so every weekend we'd spend, one of the boys, I had a brother, and one of us would spend the weekend with my dad fishing, the other one would be with my mom, and then we'd flop the following weekend. And I think that that income was needed. He needed to sell those lobster, or it allowed him to pay for the house and be prosperous being a school teacher, because as you know, they don't pay school teachers much. So through that, I think that's what got me on the water every day, just learning that I can make money at it, which is crazy to say. I mean, I loved it. Don't get me wrong, but to me, it was a way to get outside, get fishing, and we're actually making money. So, as a young age, I think, as my dad started, we'd be on the boat, and he had a partner, and we'd want to get paid, because we were making money, and he'd say, "Oh, I can't pay y'all, I can't pay y'all." And he didn't want to. My dad's like, "Hey, we need to pay the boys. They're actually putting a lot of fish in the boat. We need to start paying the boys. Or, they're getting older. They got girlfriends or whatever. We need to pay these boys." And he's like, "Well, let's just let them do their own cooler and see how that goes." So me and my brother were super stoked. We're like, "Oh, our own cooler? Okay, cool." So we pull up the first spot. These old guys are trying to get their gear on. We're already in the water, we're coming up with, hogfish and grouper speared, and we got, next we got the cooler full, and these old guys are like halfway there, and they're like, "Okay, well, let's give them 3%, and so it started there, and then we slowly, got paid to go out with them, and then we started our, doing our own thing. I started just spearing fish whenever I could, and commercial fishing, kingfish or whatever it was, and ultimately we were doing lobster, making a lot of money. I mean, there was in the heyday I didn't have plans on doing much other than commercial fishing. It was good money. And am I supposed to keep going or what?
Yeah. No. I'm waiting to see how it turns into hook and line.
Yeah. You mean guiding?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically how it turned into hook and line was I was at the marina. We were commercial fishing. And it's different for people listening and don't know about commercial fishing. We're not doing the deadliest catch. We're not running these giant nets, and we're not running these giant traps. We were commercial fishing, catching one fish at a time on a rod and reel, diving crawfish, catching one crawfish at a time. We, snorkel gear, scuba gear. I was at the marina, and a guide, Bill Oliver, he'd been around forever, some of the original pioneers of this light tackle whole industry, the whole IGFA, the Met, or whatever, them keeping line records. I think a lot of that, I could be wrong, but a lot of that originated right there in South Florida, Miami, Key West. Everybody came from Miami to Key West to get involved in that great fishery.
And the Met tournament was huge.
Absolutely. And so this Bill Oliver had accidentally had two sets of customers show up at the same time. He had messed up on the books. So he was panicking a little bit. And then I just happened to be there, and he looked over at me and he said, "Hey, Steve." And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I need you to help me out." I'm like, "Well, what's that?" And he goes, "I need you to take these guys fishing." And I'm like, "Well, Bill, man, I'm going spear fishing. I got my buddy coming. We're going to go out. It's crystal clear. There's a bunch of black groupers out there. Like, I don't know about that." He's like, "Come on, I really need you to help me out." I said, "Well, I don't even know." I said, "What are we going to fish for?" He goes, "Tarpon." And I said, "Well, I've never tarpon fished before." And he's like, "Oh, it's no problem. It's easy, man. You just follow me." And I'm like, "Okay." So here I am, going to take my first charter. Never been tarpon fishing before. And I'm going to follow this guy around and just do as he does. So, that's what we did. And I followed him out there, and he gave me these bags of trash off the shrimp boat. And I got enough of it, but I just never fished in the harbor. There was no money to be made in there, so I didn't really go in there. And I just started cutting trash. and drifting them back just like we would for yellowtail or for mutton snapper or whatever else. And I think we ended up catching like 12 tarpon, 2 35-pound permit, a giant cobia. People were so stoked. Got back to the dock. They handed me a wad of cash. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to be a fishing guy now, because it just, it was so much easier than starting out in the red, when you're commercial fishing and diving. I was selling all the fish at the local restaurants, and, I was scraping together the $100 for the fuel tank that day. And, you didn't start making money until you put that $100 back in your pocket. And if it was dirty, you didn't do it sometimes, or if it was rough, or if the equipment fails, or the boat break down, it was tough. Yeah, so that was it, man. It was a really neat entry. And then I think the skyrocketing of the guiding was when I started listening to like some of their customers getting off their boat, like me and Joe Green. I don't know if you remember Joe Green.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
He's like originator of those little tiny jig heads and sandballing for those big muttons and all these things that nobody knew anything about. I mean, these knots. I mean, all these different knots these guys were tying. They were the real deal. His customers would get off the boat, and I'd hear them talking, and they'd be like, man, I can't believe we just paid that guy to yell at us like that all day. And geez, man, I've never felt that way. And so, humiliated. And he was very successful, but I think his passion was really to expect those people to know exactly what to do and how to do it. And if they didn't, they got their ass chewed out. I mean, there was no doubt. So I said, wow, okay, so let me take them out. So then I, obviously started taking a few of the overflow, and they would be like, oh my God, we actually didn't get yelled at all. I mean, I made it a point that if people threw rods over the side, broke a rod, I didn't let it bother me. I just said, man, that kind of sucks. That was like a $200 rod. And then it normally would end up at the end of the day, the guy would throw me $400 and say, I'm really sorry about your rod. Sorry I broke your seat. Sorry I stepped on this. And so I just kind of watched and learned. And those guys were, before me, those 4 guys, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, that time in the Florida Keys, there were a lot of guys that were known for yelling and it was kind of rough. And then like when you came in and I came in, that was a time when there was like some, like what you learned is, man, if I just add a little hospitality to this and really not a lot, like if I just don't yell at them, and maybe I don't catch as many fish as they were catching, but I'm not going to yell at them. And then all of a sudden you're full.
No, you're spot on. I mean, these guys had zero personality. They were running 350 days a year, killing it. I mean, I remember stories about like John Boy on the Kingfisher. He would sleep on his boat in the barns, and like people would show up and they're like, "Oh, your captain's in there," and he'd coming up out of the bilge with beer cans all around him, and he'd go out and follow somebody fishing, and he'd tell the captain next to him, he'd tell his customers, he'd say, "Hey, when that guy pulls his anchor to head home, wake me up and then let me know, and then we'll head home." But you know what I mean? Like he'd drive them out there and go to sleep sometimes, but it was a rough group.
Hey,
rough
the same
crowd.
thing was happening on the flats boats.
Yeah.
I mean, like, hey, we're going to stake out right here. You wake me up when those tarpons start showing up.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, that's a totally different deal today because that just wouldn't fly at all, because once you start that hospitality, people realize they don't have to get yelled at and there are other options. They no longer go to those people. But I mean, the Keys were hard. It was a hard bunch of men down there. When I first showed up, I was like, dang, man, these guys are tough.
Yeah, they ran the show, man. That Oceanside Marina, that was a tight-knit group. They were fighting, and, them old men were mad at each other even, and
yeah.
It's way different now. They'd lose their mind if they see, this whole new deal. These guys out here with 3-4 boats, operating like a little company. There's so many tourists there now that pretty easy to survive.
I mean, there's been a lot of changes. So, Jake, you grew up in Key West too. What kind of changes have you guys seen? I mean, we've all been in and around the Keys for a long time, but between the times that you were a kid, I mean, there were like no traffic, basically dirt roads in a lot of Key West. Like,
I ain't that old.
You're not that old for dirt roads?
No.
But what are the main changes you've seen? Come on, Jake.
Thinking.
I tell
nothing's
you what,
coming to mind. He has a very small circle,
Yeah.
and no one gets inside of it.
Yeah.
He's trying to stay inside of the circle.
Once you hit that record button, dude, he clammed up.
He did. He clammed up. I tried to throw him a softball, but
he missed it.
Yeah.
Someone's going to catch his fancy.
I'll try not to get negative, you know what I mean, on it. But a lot's changed, Tom. You see it, man. We, my family and I now, we spend a lot of time out of there, and I schedule when I travel away from weekends and holidays. You can't just jump on that highway no more.
Right.
In the old days, man, you jump on that highway, 2.5 hours. You hit Miami. You know what I mean? It was simple. Now there is something going on in every little city every other day, and there's an event or a festival, and it's packed. But I'm sure the old timer said the same thing. As I'm saying now, but it's just busy. That's what it is. It's very busy.
Yeah. So we all we went from an area like the Keys that experienced bad hurricane last year, Irma, and here we are in an area that experienced a bad hurricane not very long ago. Probably two of the most resilient places that I know of. I mean, Venice, Louisiana, and the Florida Keys. Like,
oh yeah,
storms often, but when they do come through, it's remarkable how quickly they recover and get back to business. Like, I mean, where we were today, Venice Marina, that place was underwater in Katrina. And all of this, where we're sitting, this was basically all underwater. And
not just 10 feet of water.
Right, a
10
lot.
feet. No, we're sitting 20 feet off the water right now. And this place was barely survived.
Yeah.
This was built after all that, wasn't it?
Because of Katrina.
Yeah, but they built it super high.
Absolutely.
But they
Them stairs are kicking my butt, dude.
They just put their boots on and go back to work.
Right.
They don't complain. The Keys the same way. Some people were hurt more than others, but that's where the ones that weren't pitched in, and you get your neighbors up. You do what you got to do in your yard, then you go help your neighbor a couple of hours.
And we experienced that together right after Irma this year. I went down with you. We couldn't get in by car, so we went by boat. And I thought, man, if I can do something to help you guys, then I will. And we went down there, and what I saw there was so similar to what I saw in Wilma. We got hit with Wilma really bad, and the neighbors all pulled together. But they're on Duck Key. I mean, that is a particularly you have a really special community there, and every single person. And we're going in everybody's house and emptying out their refrigerators. And then you've got your neighbor. I can't remember what his name was, but he's got all the heavy equipment, like the
Capt Bob.
Capt Bob got that place months ahead of the surrounding areas
before anyone's allowed in by car.
Right. I mean, it's really special to see how the community will pull together and how quickly, like Robbie's, they were back up and running, feeding those tarpon, built the dock, right away. Bud and Mary's, same deal.
If you're not running, you're not making any money. It's just like you asked what's changed. There are more boats in the Keys than have ever been there in period. Everyone has just enough available income now they can at least afford a boat. And if they're not fishing for dolphin or yellowtail snappers, they're on sandbars. They're everywhere. Besides the traffic on the road, the traffic on the water is just as heavy. And it's a tribute to the fact that everyone wants to live in the Keys.
Yeah.
And they're willing to pay the price of getting hit by a storm. But, if they get in the right neighborhood, the right friends, they're going to lose something. But within a few months, they're going to be, back the way they were.
Now, the Keys are 150 miles long. A lot of people that listen to this may want to go to the Keys, but may not have ever been there. And when a storm comes through, like when Wilma came through, it really hit like where I was in Key Haven, just a couple miles up from Key West. Key West did okay, but still got hit a lot harder. You got Islamorada that barely got, or no, I'm not going to say barely got anything.
Key.
Yeah, but I mean, some places are a lot better off than others just because of wind and where it's located and all that. But as far as this storm, it was a little more north, although you encountered some pretty significant issues.
Yeah, I think Big Capt, I think we were like right on the beginning of where it got bad. If you just went pretty much from mile marker 11 to 18, anything north of that got pretty slammed.
Yeah,
these guys
until you get to like north, like Key Largo, kind of.
Yeah, that's right. The people that stayed on Duck, I did evacuate. And the people that stayed in Almrata that I talked to, the captains that hunkered down, so they had 10 hours, 140-mile-an-hour winds, 10 hours. And plus the storm surge came up to 3 to 5 feet on all the places between Almrata and Duck Key where the streets turned into rivers. And Duck Key never flooded during Wilma, and I was confident it would never flood. But Wilma came from the bay side, and Irma came from the ocean side, and Duck Key went under almost 3 foot of water.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how do you think in where do you think the Keys are now compared to, I mean, it was almost this time last year. It was that storm came through, I think, September 9th, or wasn't it something like that? So we're just over a year later, and from my, it's been remarkable.
That's what the word I would
changes.
use. Yeah, I've been home every day. I didn't travel as much this year since the storm, so I had seven months on Ducky every day, cleaning up after the storm, helping my neighbors, and trying to get life back to normal. And then I left for my summer trip to Maryland. I was gone 3 months, and I just got home a week ago for this shoot. So I finally had left Ducky for the first time in 7 months in the storm, and I just got home a week ago, and I noticed that the island looked remarkable. I didn't think the green would be back, the palm trees would be back, but the Keys they've been going through these cycles way longer than we have. And the trees and all the local stuff that's supposed to be there look dead, but that's just its way of regenerating.
The mangrove, to me, is probably the most remarkable plant. I mean, when we were down there right after the storm, everything was brown. If you took a satellite photo of the Keys would be brown. And those trees, they look all gnarled and beat up anyway, but when the leaves are off of them, they look as dead can get. And then you're like, well, those are never coming back. A few months later, they got leaves on them. I mean, I find that to be amazing that plant can handle that kind of wind and being underwater and actually growing. They grow right on the salt water, but that's got to be the toughest plant in the world. But yeah, I find the Keys and this area of Louisiana to be quite similar. I mean, it's basically a peninsula that's coming down, and the Keys, it's just a chain of islands. It's all connected by a bunch of bridges to the end of the road. And here in Venice, it's the same thing. It's just the end of the road. And here we have this Mississippi River that creates it has to be one of the greatest sport fishing areas in the entire world. Do you guys see similarities between the Keys and Venice, both with the personalities and the storms and kind of everything that has to go into it? I mean,
there's fishing generated incomes is half of it, more so here. Well, no, that's not. They got oil here. You got roughnecks and fishermen side by side. In the Keys, you have tourism and fishing. Throw a little diving in there, but yeah, that's all generated about the beautiful water. It's brown here, but it's prolific. It's so full of fish and opportunities, from freshwater bass to catching a swordfish. It's all right there on any given day. The Keys, you can go catch a mangrove at the dock or a swordfish. If you want to, the fishing brings everyone back.
Yeah, I've always said that if Venice had the restaurants and the nightlife that Key West have, we'd be out of business.
Yeah,
because the fishing is spectacular.
Yeah, it is
different.
You know what they don't have is they don't have wintertime warm weather.
Right.
I mean, like, it gets cold here.
Right.
And I think that you're not going to have somebody from New York decide that Venice is a great place to go in January.
Right. But those tourists that travel in that spring and early fall, I'm with you, because people get away from the cold and they go to the Keys. But as far as just the amount of fish that I see hit the docks here, it is ridiculous.
Dude,
I mean,
like that, when we were sitting there eating lunch today, we were at the Venice Marina, and that's just a place where work gets done. I mean, every charter captain that pulls in has a limit of something.
And
there is a fish cleaning table there that has to be outside of a commercial fish house in someplace like the Keys or like a California place or someplace where they're bringing in serious fish. I don't know if there's another fish cleaning,
no way,
a cleaning station that has seen as many fish come across it as the Venice Marina.
This one guy, he had trout that was his pile was 8 feet long and 3 foot wide, and they were like 5 high.
Electric knives buzzing as fast as they can go.
Then I peeked my head around the corner, and then there was like another guy with a pile the same size. And I look around the other corner, the guy got a pile just like that of redfish. And
then here come the tuna boats.
Yeah, and there was 7 more bay boats waiting to unload their fish to clean them.
Yeah, it's really incredible. But it's the Mississippi River. I think this trip, I really thought that we did really well on this trip, because we had this front that was coming in, and I saw this on the radar before we even started to move towards this area. I thought, man, this front, you could see it coming across the country. It's like, man, that's going to get us. And so day one, we did pretty good, and it didn't really hit us until yesterday. But we had a good trip. I mean, I thought this trip was as good, if not even better, than some of the other trips that we've been.
Well, we were able to fish for what we wanted to every day. We didn't have to like settle. I mean, we would gladly gone red fishing if we couldn't get on the ocean, but we didn't have to deal with wind over 15 knots, and generally it was 10 knots the whole time.
Yeah, a couple of rainstorms here and there.
If we had a wave, it was wind driven from a little thunderhead. That's rare, man.
Well, I'll tell you what's rare is when we show up someplace that the wind's not blowing 50.
Well, I thought
if
it was going to happen.
To town, don't visit.
I was watching the weather. I was watching these guys and what they were catching prior to us coming, and it was slick every day. And I'm like, oh, there goes our days. There's our days. Should have been us. Should have been us. And I just stopped looking. I didn't even want to know, And yeah, we made out. I mean, it was a little bouncy, but I think it was better because I judge it by the fact that we got in sometimes when the sun was still up. You know what I mean? Because I mean, the times before we've been here, we had to hump it. Now we had great catches, but we had to hump it a little bit. Maybe this was off or that was off. Work a little harder or go a little further. But the fishery seemed a lot closer this time. Those shrimp boats, we targeted more on that. I think the time before it was more of a oil
floaters,
85
miles.
Yeah.
So we also fish the shrimp boats in the Keys, but this is a different deal. I mean, first of all, you got yellowfin tuna versus blackfin tuna. I mean, we have blackfin up here, but they treat the blackfin almost like we treat the bonita down there, like not interested. We're here for the yellowfin. Blackfin is a nice second place, but and then the bonita are nuts and they're huge. But I don't know. Those shrimp boats, I like that. I like that the way that they do that here. And I wonder how that really started as far as these guys that are looking for the tuna. How do you think that got started? I mean, like you were doing it in the Keys. How did that?
Stories I heard was, these guys were basically getting the bait to catch these tarpon, and that there was a huge tarpon fishery. I mean, it was so important to Key West.
Well, but there was a shrimp
fishery
factory right there,
absolutely.
Right? So they would bring the shrimp in, and then and this is a little bit before my time, but they would get the shrimp heads, and they would chum for bonefish with the shrimp heads. They'd chum for I mean, you could chum for anything with shrimp head, like a 50-pound sack of shrimp heads, and that was easy. And for some reason, that went away, and you couldn't get that any longer. And so some people were like, well, let's just go straight to the boat, and they've got all this other stuff.
That's how I heard it played out from some of the guys is basically these guys were running out there for the bait, and through passing the bait back and forth, something hit the water.
Ooh.
And the customer was like, okay, so why are we going to run back to Key West to fish for tarpon? Like, do you see that there's like 400 tunas here and, a bunch of amberjacks and a bunch of cobias? I think somewhere in that, but I'm sure those guys were out there even fishing in the Gulf, fishing on the shrimp boat wrecks, because that's the only wrecks we have out there. There's a few wrecks from like World War II or what have you, but I think a majority of those wrecks are old shrimp boats that have sank, and they're all wooden boats back then, and they had ice on them, so they had to come in. These guys, I think they were, they saw what was happening behind those boats. I mean, whether it was the sharks or the tunas or the, just the sea life.
Well, you got to believe that the guys actually working on shrimp boats
told them something too. Yeah.
Said, listen, we're shoveling this stuff overboard, and I don't know much, but there's more tunas here than I've ever seen anywhere. And maybe that guy got off that shrimp boat, got onto a charter boat, and said, if you really want to catch something, I was working on that shrimp boat 40 miles over there, and there was all the blackfin tunas you ever wanted. And then the right captain goes, huh. And then, secondhand news turns into tomorrow's headlines.
You also have to see that that's got to evolve a little bit, because at that time, probably you're running a 25-foot single-engine boat. So 40 miles, it has to be the right day. It has to be, okay, and then you have to get on the radio or you have to come directly off of that boat. And then it kind of evolves. Now you got the twin-engine boats. Now they get a little bigger. Then today, I mean, there's no shrimp boat in the Gulf of Mexico that these guys can't hit now. I bet you that the way that the Keys started and the way that this started is kind of similar, kind of like, wonder what's going on over there. And the next thing you know, there's like a 200-pound yellowfin tuna.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's crazy because I actually recognize some of the boats here.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. From I used to deal with them down in Key West. So I thought it was really cool because, listen, none of those boats in the Keys, there's like 3 shrimp boats out of Key West. One's Jake's neighbor. There's like another dude it's got, by chance, he bought his slip in Safe Harbor because there's nowhere for the shrimper to tie up anymore. I know the old days that the Key West Harbor itself, where the Raw Bar is, where the Conch Republic Seafood Company is, where all the action is, and all the big yachts now, that was all shrimp boats. And the fishery was huge. And I think a lot of guys started traveling and finding the shrimp. But when we're out there, they're from Alabama. They're from Texas.
Yeah.
They're from Louisiana. They're not
The winter's
Key
too
West.
tough here.
Yeah.
The weather's too much.
Then there's that story about the Key West shrimp, being a nocturnal shrimp, and the guys. I mean, you probably know way more about that. Is that an urban legend or what? That
from what I heard, and I could be wrong, but I always took it as, because that's the difference I noticed between Key West and Louisiana. These boats we're fishing in Louisiana are moving, and they're shrimping 24/7. They are shrimping during the day, and you're pulling up behind a moving boat. You're throwing bait behind the moving boat, trying to pull the fish off. You drift off. You take some fish with you. In Key West, all the boats are sleeping during the day. They work all night long. And what I was told the reason, and Jake might have the answer better than I do, but it was because they catch too much fish. They can't shrimp during the day because there's too much fish, and maybe it's the sand, a different type of bottom that we have as versus up here. But if they pull the nest during the day, the fish is too much fish, too many, little fish, white fish or what have you. So they just wait till night, and then their catch is a majority shrimp and crabs and things that, are more, or heck, you know what? The water's so dirty here, these shrimp might think it's nighttime.
Right.
That's why they catch them during the day,
But where we were actually catching the yellowfin, that water was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, you were in the water. How clear was it?
It wasn't very clear.
Wasn't very clear?
Wasn't very clear.
It was a lot clearer than the river.
Yeah.
As far as comparing that to where you fish in Key West.
But it's brown here in Key West. When it gets dirty, it's white. So you got the river water coming out, which is brown, and then it's majority fresh water. Well, it's all fresh water when it's brown there, and then it's mixing with the ocean. But that brown water just kind of rides on top of the ocean, and because it's fresh water, floats. And
yeah, listen, you're talking to like a spear fisherman out of Key West, and we like one thing. We like that water
Clear
to
water.
look like a glass, you get a glass out of your kitchen sink and you fill it with water, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what gets us jacked up and fired up. And to get in, and we listen, we all know about sharks. We've all seen tons of sharks. We've all had our personal experiences with sharks, and it's just nice to see it coming. You know what I mean? Like anything, if you're gonna get punched in the face and you know it's coming, it's kind of like, okay, but the sucker punch will get you. You know what I mean? Like, you ain't getting up from that. You know what I'm saying? But if you see this guy coming at you and he punches you almost got one to come back at. And that's how I feel about the sharks. And I think Jake's the same way. I mean, you don't want to get your ass bit in the dirty water.
Right.
You don't want to, you want to see it coming.
Were you nervous at all this trip, diving?
I'm nervous every time I'm working for you guys. And you're like, he
what do
gets
you
in
mean?
everywhere.
That's just going to dinner.
I thought you did this because you like it. This actually works.
I was trying to figure out yesterday what I was doing, and I couldn't come up with an answer.
Well, yesterday, that was the day. That was the day where if you were going to have some doubts, that might have been a good one.
I have doubts all the time, and you guys hooked that cobia and you drifted off the rig, and I couldn't see my feet.
Yeah.
And I was on that rig by myself, and the camera boat's out of sight, and you guys are drifting away, and I'm just, okay, now what? Now what are we going to do?
What about
Did you see a ladder or anything that you could climb up that joker?
I was eyeballing it.
We never leave you behind.
But yeah, no, that water is dirty on top.
Yeah.
Dirty. I mean, you can't see your feet.
It's a morale killer, Tom. I don't know how much time you spent, snorkeling for the lobster, maybe with your family when you were living there in Kiev. But basically, it's a morale killer. If you spend any amount of time spearfishing or swimming or snorkeling or scuba diving or sightseeing or tropical fish collecting or whatever, you wake up in the morning a lot different when you know it's going to be dirty. You don't even want to go. You're like,
it's like when the wind's blowing hard.
Like we're commercial diving lobster. Me and Jake, we still do it. We try to get it done a little bit every year. And we dove together this year. If it was dirty, we went out on the south side, and it was supposedly some unbelievable amount of crawfish on the south side. So we went out there, and it's a morale killer because Jake, he'll tell you, man. I was like, Jake, how's it? It's not the same when you can't see what you're doing.
Yeah. We couldn't see the bottom from the top.
Yeah, and we'd go down there and feel around. We'd lose the spot. So he'd come up and he'd say, "Oh, there's 30 in this rock," and then he'd go back down, and that rock's not there anymore. Whereas when it's clear, you can just sit there and hover, and it's just a lot easier on your body and a lot less swimming around looking. I think when you use your eyeballs in that dirty water, it's burning oxygen. You're trying to find what you're doing. Whereas if it's clear, you don't have to struggle and look for stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the key to holding your breath a long time is absolutely being totally relaxed. So if you're concerned about a shark, if you're concerned, you can't find what you're looking for, you're not going to be able to hold your breath as long.
All those video clips on that oil platform where the water was dirty, they're short. They're real short. The heart was beating fast, and the clips are short. That clear water is some long clips.
Yeah.
So yesterday we catch a swordfish, and you have a little encounter with the swordfish. What happened?
What happened? Well, made a mistake.
What was the
looking
mistake?
back on that, the mistake was getting between the fish and the boat.
Yeah.
That's a DMZ. That's no man's land. You don't go there. I went there, and I found out why you don't do it.
Well, explain why.
Why?
Because you're saying don't get between the fish and the boat, because the fisherman, you're talking about a hooked fish, and the fisherman is actually pulling the fish towards you. So if the fish decides to turn to you, there's no resistance.
That's right.
Right.
That's one thing. But since the fishermen are pulling him to the boat too, that's what's trying to catch him. That's his problem, and he can see the boat, and he sees his problem. And you're part of it. You get in between them. He was, I believe, just trying to defend himself, or he's.
Yeah, absolutely.
He wasn't going lightly.
Yeah, that fish was not.
And I was between them.
Yeah, that fish was not charging the boat at other times because he was fighting us. He's like, listen, whatever is messing with me is coming from that object. And so he's like, man, what is this? Why can't I swim away? Why can't I go back down to the bottom where I want to go? And then old Perry got in there and he's like, oh.
Well, when you watch the video, and we'll put the video in the show notes. We'll put the video in the show notes. We'll put the pictures of what we're about to talk about in the show notes, and you can go to TomRowlandPodcast.com and you can look at all this stuff that we're talking about and get a better idea of what's going on. But what happened? We've looked at this video over and over and over again, and even done. Jason Stemple showed us how to just move it frame by frame. And this swordfish is coming from the right to the left on the hook. Jake kind of pulls in front of it like he's talking about, and he gets between the boat and the swordfish. And all of a sudden, the swordfish is going right to left, and then he sees Jake and makes a conscious decision, this swordfish, like, oh, you're the problem.
Yeah.
Boom, and does a 90-degree turn and comes and slams into you.
Yeah, he hit me pretty hard.
So Jake and I started trying to figure out how we could do a better job with the underwater on this deal. Jake had an idea that maybe one of these scooters would be a good idea. And if you don't know what that is, it's like Sea-Doo makes it, and it's got a battery pack in it. It's got basically a big propeller on the back with a guard on it, and Jake holds onto these handlebars that has a little throttle control, and we've mounted the cameras on top of that so he can go down just like we're talking about. If you have to kick your feet and chase after these fish, no matter who you are or how long your breath hold is, you're burning up all your oxygen doing that. So now he can go use this scooter and go right up next to the fish without burning any oxygen. You're able to stay down way longer. Mm-hmm. And it also, in this case, provided basically a shield for you because it's out in front of you, which I know you like for the sharks.
For sure.
But I mean, I'm telling you what, man, we've done a lot of crazy stuff, and we've seen a lot of fish that you just jump right in with, and I don't think it's going to, I mean, I'm like, man, that like a hooked tiger shark at the boat, and you're just no problem going right down the side. And I'm thinking, man, that is a hooked fish. That fish is going to behave differently than just a regular fish. I know you've swam with tons of sharks, but the ones that make me really nervous are the hooked ones.
What he's bumping into, he's biting.
Right.
So even if he's scared to death, shark's like, oh my gosh, I want out of here. We release him. If he accidentally bumps into you,
yes,
you're getting bit.
100%.
Because he's mad.
And we've all seen it where a lemon shark or something turns around, bites his tail, and is in a physical donut, holding on to his tail with his mouth, and will not let his own tail go. He won't let his own tail go. He's not letting your leg go.
Yeah.
Well, what usually happens in that case, I've been bit by a lemon. The damage is done when you pull away.
Really?
Yeah. Because if you and I always, a kid, I'm like, so the best move is to sit there and maybe try to get him, pull his mouth off of you or whatever. But when you pull away, that's when you tear every single thing.
So you're telling me that as a kid, you have the presence of mind to sit there with a lemon shark biting your
well,
leg?
that was after I got bit and I pulled away. And the damage was pretty bad from pulling away. So I said, next time I get bit, I'm not going to pull away. I'm going to poke him in the eyes or whatever I got to do to try to get him off. And I know that's very hard, but man, pulling away, them teeth are designed to hold.
Right.
And they're pointed back.
They all go back.
And when you pull away, and I'm sure that's how it's designed, you're going to bleed to death, or, it's going to do a lot more damage. Now, that's easier said than done, I'm sure, because a lot of people pull away quick when something ain't right,
Right. I mean, that's obviously the natural reaction is to get your arm, out of that shark's mouth or your leg or whatever. But man, talk about presence of mind. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet. I keep telling myself I'm going to do that.
That's what I'll do next time. But did you have any idea that, I mean, I think we've all heard about swordfish, hitting divers and stuff like that. But that's just not the one that I thought we would have a problem with.
Well, I always imagined at some point it would be, and it was, and getting back to how fast things change. When I had one of those cameras set to take photos every, 3 frames per second, 3 photos per second. So it's taking a photo every 0.3 seconds. When we looked at them, there was a photo of the fish, in the camera, and it took a photo of his bill in the scooter. And then the one right before it, he was 15 to 20 feet away. So he moved from 15 feet to 20 feet away, completely sideways, to in the camera, stuck in the camera in less than 0.3 seconds.
Right. And we were watching this video over and over again, you and I were last night, and before Jason Stemple showed us how to do the frame by frame. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going, I wonder how many times he wagged his tail, really kicked his tail before he came at you. And I'm trying to count, but it happened so fast. And then when Jason showed us that, it was a 90-degree turn and then 4 tail kicks, as hard as a swordfish can kick. And what happened was that the bill went into the nose cone of this scooter. And I explained it to somebody today, like if you were to take a railroad spike and put it into a railroad tie with a sledgehammer. And we have each one of us have tried to pull the remaining 6 inches of this bill. So the bill went in 6 inches and then broke off. And you can see it happened in seconds. And we've all tried to pull this out.
It's like Excalibur sword.
Excalibur.
It's in the stone. It's not coming out.
I don't think it's coming out. It's really in there.
No, you can take
but it
that
went in
home.
6
I do
inches.
want it. Let's get it.
I don't know
Send
how
it
we're
back
going
to
do
the
it.
factory. So get this out. Don't break
I
it.
think it goes back to that fish is a whole nother animal. You've always heard people say, talk about it. Those guys on the West Coast, they talk about the bills are like in the bowels of some of those boats. That fish, and Scott's caught more of them than any of us, here in this room, and it's just got an attitude. It's a different deal. It's hard to explain. I think it spends its life with the makos. I think a mako was created to eat swordfish.
But a swordfish was created to fend off the makos.
Exactly.
Right.
He's
if they live together and and one's a predator.
I've talked to longliners who have caught makos in the Gulf of Mexico, over 800 pounds, that have had multiple swordfish bills snapped off inside their mouth. But because their move is to take the tail out, then the bill, and then let the carcass float for days while they feed on it. That's their move, tail, bill. But on the other hand, the sword, the only way to defend himself. It's not to it's to get that eye, get the head of the mako. Huh. So these sorts have to be some incredible undersea wars between the big sword and the makos.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, there's no, the difference is this, sharks are not after you out of vendetta. You know what I'm saying? The shark is after you because he's hungry. He wants to bite you. Not bite you, but you know what I'm saying? He wants to eat. He's after you because you just shot a fish. He's after you because you look like a sea turtle. He's after you because, whatever the case may be, he mistakes you for food. I'd never, ever would think that a shark on a hook is going to turn around. I don't think they got the capability, and I could be wrong. I probably make a bunch of people mad, but I don't think they're smart enough to relate those situations and turn and say, okay, I'm going to bite that guy, and that's going to end this problem.
Yeah.
I just don't feel that with that fish.
But do you feel like if there's a hooked fish and the diver comes near it, that it might think, okay, that's obviously my problem. Like I'm just turning and biting anything and everything.
I think yes, he's going to turn and bite anything, everything. But I spent a lot of time in the water, and I can't ever say, oh, there's tarpon. He's 200 pounds. He's going to go after the diver. And I'm not saying bite him or whatever, but ram him. Or this sailfish is going to go after the diver. We've swam with millions of, not millions, but a ton of sailfish and never have had an issue. I just think that fish is a level up. You know what? I'm a badass. I run the show. You know what I mean?
Well, the swordfish, I mean, when we did the first swordfish show that we ever caught one on Into the Blue, we did a really nice feature just on a swordfish. And we talked to some scientists and stuff like that, and I was just amazed at what a badass that fish is at period. I mean, they live, Scott, tell us about where does a swordfish making his living? What is he doing? And how does he go from the bottom to the top like no other fish?
Because he has the ability to warm his brain, just like the big bluefin tuna. So atmospheres don't bother them. So they can feed all day long, all night long. They come to the surface. The greatest migration on Earth is not the plains of Africa. The greatest migration on Earth is the travel from the deep to the surface every night.
When you say deep, how deep are you talking?
At the bottom of the ocean. Everything on the bottom of the ocean rises to the surface after sundown. It's the microorganisms, the squid, everything. And the sword rises up with them and goes down with them because he has a 24-hour feed bag. And I just know from personal tagging swords that 10 years ago, maybe 15, I tagged about a 35-pound swordfish, way undersized, circle hook, but he came up dead. In my opinion, he was dead. I tagged it, I filled out my card, and I sent it in to National Marine Fisheries or the Billfish Foundation. And, I felt bad for the fish, but I did my due diligence. I filled out the paperwork, sent it in.
But you called it dead, in your mind.
I thought it was dead. And 3 years later, I get a little email letter from the Billfish Foundation with a hat and thanks for releasing. Here's the information on this fish. 3 years later, the fish was caught in North Carolina by a longliner, and it was 300 pounds.
So just to be clear, you thought it was dead, and you had to let it go by law,
right? I tagged it anyway,
right? And
filled out tag card and sent it in. Because they want to know. I mean, they're trying to. They want to know if they're released live, dead, what condition. I said condition, dead, circle hook, dead. And then 3 years later, it was recaptured on a long line. It was 300 pounds.
300.
What made you
300 pounds in 3 years?
What made you think dead? The blood or the?
It wasn't moving.
Wasn't moving.
Yeah.
The lack of black slime.
No, it wasn't bleeding. The circle hook went in the mouth and came out that soft spot underneath the eye. It was, I used a lot bigger hooks when we first started this. And I said, that's just terrible. I felt like, man, I'm trying to catch them and I can't keep it by law. I could have eaten it, but no, law says you got to let them go. And that's what you do. So I let it go. I filled out my paperwork, didn't think anything of it again. 3 years later.
Turns out the law was right.
Yeah. 300 pounds.
Dang.
In 3 years. But think about it. They can eat squid 24 hours a day.
So that's interesting because to me, a swordfish looks like a very old fish. Like you see one of these big swordfish, but that story tends to think that you would tend to think that they're putting on about 100 pounds a year.
Well, knowing what I know and watching dolphin like we do year round here in the Keys, come April, we're catching the big ones. In June, they're not as big. Then July, you struggle to catch a big fish. There's so many, 12 to 14 inches as far as the eye can see. And then, you find out from science that a 20-pounder is 1 year old. 15 to 20 pounds, 1 year old. So why can't the swordfish do the same thing? I mean, obviously, they're fast-moving and they have a constant food source. Dolphin have a constant food source with the Gulf Stream and the sargassum that they live in. So why, and they're eating little teeny fry, mostly juvenile billfish and stuff. But a swordfish is eating squid from day one. And that's a bigger protein snack. And more, when you do catch them and their stomachs are full, a 100-pound swordfish can have 15 pounds of squid in their belly, right? I mean, you've seen it. They can either have 3 big ones or they can have 30. You can't fit another one in there, and yet they eat your bonita strip.
Right. That crazy, that lead that Jordan showed us blew me away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So these guys are dropping, 10 pounds of lead?
6, 8, and 10-pound lead sticks. They're about 12 to 14 inches long.
Yeah, they are almost as big around as a beer bottle, and they're dropping that down to, how
1,600
feet. And so that takes a long time to get down there. And it looks like someone took a file and just filed into it, but that's not what happened at all. A swordfish just beat the hell out of that thing. And lead's not very, it's not like it's steel, but it's a little softer. But man,
the wave, a force to bend it, for starters. Imagine a stick of dynamite like the Roadrunner would be using, and it was bent with almost 2 inches, that's 3 inches up of 1.5 inch thick lead, and then the gashes. There was 20 gashes on this one lead.
Yeah.
He said it was one drop, one fish. It was early in his career. So he was trying to hook his first one, and nothing was going on. That the rod's going bomb, 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 and they're just not hooking. When the episode ended, they wind it up to see what's going on. Maybe their hooks turned over or something. And the lead was what the thing was beating
sea
on.
monsters down there, man.
Beating on it.
Yeah, to not lose interest, you know what I mean? That's got to hurt a little bit. But apparently those guys, they're tough.
It was almost as stupid as that dolphin you caught yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. That was amazing.
We had a giant dolphin. As we're releasing, so I'm on the camera boat, and these guys are wrapping up the show and releasing this, or putting the sword in the coffin box. And I look down and I see what appears to be a 60-pound dolphin swimming right off the bow of the camera boat, and I'm jumping up and down and trying not to yell too much, but I'm also realizing that this thing is probably going to swim off into the glare. We'll never see it again. And finally get somebody's attention. I'm like, 60-pound dolphin, 60-pound dolphin, 60-pound dolphin. And they scramble. Steve, you always have prepared, like one of your MOs is you should always have a jig or you should always have a lure, right? Something that you can throw. And pretty much every shoot, that spinning rod ends up somewhere. There's a lure that usually catches everyone's shirt as you walk by, but it paid off yesterday, big time.
Absolutely. That fish, that made the show really and truly, because we were coming off of this crazy high-fiving session on the fact that we just, we actually pulled the hook on this swordfish at the boat. This fish was done. The swivel was at the tip, and it was time to gaff him. And as he reaches over to gaff the fish, the hook pulls, and you see the squid fly out of his mouth, fly to the other side of the boat. And I'm like, oh no. And luckily Jordan was quick and fast, and he stuck that fish while it was still getting its wits about itself, between losing half its bill and Jake's scooter and just getting yanked up from the bottom. He stuck him before he got away. But as we were just totally stoked that this thing didn't turn into another lost fish, because we had already lost 2 swordfish prior to that. It's just hard doing a show without the money shot, and that fish was the money shot for all of us. At any rate, and one of us heard you say dolphin, and I ran back and snatched that lure. I threw it out there, and I didn't even know where the fish was. I didn't even care. I just knew I needed to throw it real far because I didn't want to be short on them. A lot of times when fish are cruising, they're not going to turn around, but if you put it in front of them, they're going to bite it. So I threw it as far as I could off the bow, not even really paying attention to where, I didn't even try to find him visually. I popped that thing a bunch, nothing. I didn't realize he was only 30 yards away, but I threw this thing like 60 yards or 50 yards or whatever. And then he saw it at like maybe 30 yards off the bow, and I'm coming, and he's chasing it. And basically I had the lure 2 feet from the rod tip, and I was doing like that musky stuff you see on TV where they like swing the rod around in circles, because I was out of line to reel in, and he was chasing it right there, and I couldn't get him to get it. So I think I made another quick cast. He ate it, and we're all all jacked up, and he jumps and spits it, and we're like, oh no. So Scott fires a lure. Scott, and we're hooked up, and we're like, sweet, everybody's all happy again, and then it jumps and spits his lure out. So I fire again at it. I snag it in its back. I tear its dorsal fin in half. So now you see this big white like stripe on his back. And I'm like, oh my God, this sucks. It's over. 3 strikes, you're out. That's the way it works. Baseball and fishing. I threw it again, and he piled on it. Yeah. And he ate it, and I set the hook like nobody's business.
And this all happened in a span of, between the time that the sword gets in the boat and the dolphin gets in the boat. We're really talking less than a minute.
No, there's a swordfish flopping around on the deck.
It's flopping around on the deck, and then in less than a minute, we miss this dolphin 4 times or 3 times, and then finally hook up, And what was crazy about it, too, was that Jordan was so jacked up. I mean, this guy played linebacker for Tulane, and he is no joke. And he's already, got the gaff in his hand, and he's just waiting. That fish made one jump and actually
jumped towards the boat.
Yeah, it jumped towards the boat, and like they hit and kind of glide. Well, he glid the wrong way, and Jordan was like, "Yes, got it."
That fish went from free swimming to in an ice box.
Like normally, we'll have to take out the fighting of fish, like when we're catching sailfish or we're catching tarpon or permit. In a show, you only got so much time, so we don't show the fight. We just try to kind of show the hookup, show the catch. Well, this one, you don't have to take anything out. You can show the whole thing, and it literally is going to be 30 seconds.
Yeah.
From box to bite.
Yeah, I just thought that just summed up basically saltwater fishing completely.
Why people are addicted.
Why they're addicted, but also the whole, like yesterday was just it was just perfect. You couldn't describe saltwater fishing better than yesterday, and it is an intense amount of rigging, an intense amount of paying attention to the details, a long journey, and then I couldn't believe it, but I mean, one drop and you're on, loss, a tremendous amount of boredom, followed by, okay, finally we've got it, and this is probably going to be our day. Also, there's weather coming in, horrible lightning storm coming in, and then just this amazing amount of excitement and action in a very small amount of time that just, I mean, that is saltwater fishing.
Yeah, like, and it's and the difference too is with TV, it's tough on us. I mean, a lot of times we're like, you guys are our cheerleaders, and you're like, okay, guys, how about some enthusiasm? And I'm like, like I'm not excited about this kingfish. You know what I mean? It's a kingfish, and okay, yay! Look, Scott, I'm hooked up, and we're trying to be excited, but I love it when that kind of situation unfolds, because that is a true natural reaction to why we're there. Why people are spending this kind of money to come out to Venice, why people travel around the world, why people have $400,000 outboard boats, because you can't buy that feeling that we had in that block right there.
Right. And for me, and why I like to tell the story is exactly for that. Like, that's the story that ultimately we're trying to tell on the television show is that, like, exactly what happens in the natural raw emotion and all of that stuff. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's tough. I mean, people ask a lot about how long does it take to film a TV show? I mean, if we told somebody 3 weeks, they wouldn't be that surprised. I mean, but often it happens early, but sometimes it's really tough. And I mean, I'd like to know what you guys think is the most difficult part about filming a TV show, because I got my ideas, but
I think mine is when I'm driving the boat. I revert back to, let me get this done. Let me find these fish. Let me, everybody's, we got a heck of a production team behind us, and we have a lot of people. And hey, let's not kid ourselves. We're all getting older. You know what I mean? and we all want to get it done. And so for me, it's, if I'm behind the wheel, it's making the right decisions. I almost feel like I'm on a charter again, because let's get it done. Let's get the lighting right. Let's get it before it's dark, or before that we got to sit back at the dock and clean the fish in the dark and get the lights out and make a bunch of more work for everybody else. So I think the hardest part for me is just to get on the fish if I'm the captain, I guess.
Well, what do you think, Scott?
What's the hardest part for me on the boat?
We're so
making a TV show.
Yeah, making a TV show.
Working with Steve.
Well, I was gonna. That was
Hurry
gonna
up
be
and wait. Hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait.
It's gonna be
it's nothing to do with Steve. I'm conditioned to catch as many fish as possible in a shortest amount of time possible. That's what I've been doing since I was 14 years old. That's how you make money. That's how you make a name for yourself.
Yes.
That's how you get repeat customers.
Dead on.
And to do that and film it, it's not possible.
Yeah, so
it's
Scott,
hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait. But the fish are right there. Cameras aren't ready. It's a sailfish. He's not going to stay there for more than 50. Your window from the time he bites your teaser to the time he bites your bait is 15 seconds. And I'm paying attention, and I know the cameras are heavy, and I totally understand that. And they got to be on the right side. So, but if you're right there, how's the fish even going to come to us? I'm just amazed that 11 years later, me and Steve have continually able to make good TV for everybody to enjoy, because there's always a camera boat right in the way.
in the chum slick.
In the chum.
But that has got to be the hardest on him because I beg. I'm like, Scott, all right, show the fish to the camera. He's like, and the cooler lid down.
Time for
those
another.
things bite. No, you can't. They'll hook you. No, and I'm like, okay, this will be cool. He'll actually take the hook out, and the guys on the camera boat will get to see the fish. No, knife out. Cuts the leader off. He slams it in the box. Shuts the box.
I'm not getting a hook in my hand for TV ever again.
Yeah,
well, that happened.
Yeah.
I know, and I haven't forgotten. It was painful.
Yeah, he definitely. His MO is
when I can make Steve laugh because my blood is pouring out of my finger. That's not good.
But his MO is, I would agree because I see it. And I think his hardest part would definitely 100% be having to wait on you guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's frustrating to him because tournament guy, and I get it. But with me, I did enough guiding as whatever. And I'm like, well, it's frustrating for us because you see what we're doing. We're pulling it back up to the rig. You see we're holding this rod. We're not out here for a fun time. We are, but you know what I mean? The rain, the sun, the rain, the lightning, the storm, the weather, everything. Yeah, we're fishing. Pick it up, pick the camera up. It's
No, man, you're acting like I don't know. I mean, it's 14 years of the same frustration as a fisherman and a tournament fisherman. That's what I'm supposed to do. I find that to be the hardest thing ever. When people ask me like, what do you think? What's hard about filming a TV show? And I'm like, everything. First of all, like you're out there when you first start, and you pull in and you got everything perfect. And you catch a few fish and you're thinking, okay, great. This is going great. Now you have this burden of someone doing donuts around you while you're doing this. And all of a sudden you're doing things or you're being asked to do things that you would have thought previously were completely impossible. And I don't know about you guys, but I know that it's made me a better fisherman to realize, okay, well, I thought this was completely impossible. And obviously it's not. Like we got it done. Like, we're getting ready to catch a bonefish that's tailing right there. Well, it's right into the sun. You can't cast in there. We can't shoot that. So we're like, so what? You want us to pole all the way around the thing? There's no possible way it's going to be there. But you know what? If you do it really slow, sometimes they're there.
Sometimes.
It's absolutely amazing. Sometimes they're there.
I rarely think we're going to catch a sailfish on our drift lines when you guys are sitting on top of them. And I'm like, I won't even look that direction. I just look at the kite. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to bite over there. But
sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Mostly they bite on the other side of the boat.
How about
you can't see them?
The reason that you guys are the hosts of Into the Blue is because you're both the real thing, coming from two different backgrounds. Scott with the billfish background, you with the commercial fishing, commercial diving, center console background, Steve. You are both incredibly capable captains. You're both incredibly capable fishermen, and you probably think about things a little bit differently. How have you guys figured out how to have two captains on a boat? Because, it's really difficult to have two captains on a boat, but you guys seem to have pretty much worked it out. Obviously, there's times where you think one way, you think exactly the opposite way.
Well, that makes good TV.
Yeah, well, it does, actually.
11 years later.
But I think we're experts at our own. We have our own. I can't think of the word I'm thinking of, but Scott is amazing at what he does, at sail fishing, at kite fishing, at sword fishing, at the things that he targets, tournament fishing, preparedness. And my forte, I think, is bottom fishing or reef fishing and snapper fishing. I never even knew how to snell a hook until I met him. I never even thought about snelling a hook. He brings him circle hooks, and I'm just pissed. I'm like, what are these things, bro? So he's an expert at what he does, and I think I don't do those things often, and I think he bottom fishes as well, but not as often as I do. Just like, yes, I sail fish as well, but nowhere near as often as he does. So his knowledge of the blue water and trolling even, dude, when I go dolphin fishing, I literally walk in the store. I grab a pack of ballyhoo, one pack. I have these two beat up lures I've been pulling around for 6 years. I hook the ballyhoo through the eye and we let it rip. You know what I mean? And when we have a show,
he goes to sleep and tells the customer, "Let me know when that rod bends."
Exactly. And drive this boat, follow that blackbird, wake me up when he hits the water. And then I show up at the dock when we got to shoot with Scott and we're doing a dolphin show. This joker is like 1,000 miles a minute. There is 47 rigged values. I'm like, are we selling those to somebody? Like, what are we possibly going to do with all these values that are pre-rigged? Like, I'm like, what?
Not pre-rigged. He rigged.
Yeah, he rigged. Pre-rigged by him. Poop is removed. Eyeballs removed. I take a spring and I wrap it around its head, maybe, and I get it. There's a whole different, I came at it way differently. You know what I mean? I just came at it with tie this on, it works. I think Scott with the tournament and the blue water and the Maryland and the trolling and the marlin fishing, I think every bite, you have to make every bite count. The attention's in the detail. Everything needs to swim, needs to be perfect. Whereas I think a lot of my, amazing catches that I've had are just right place, right time. And I truly feel that my confidence is there because I've made it happen with a chicken shit rig. And
I like to think that I bring a little technology into Steve's life.
Absolutely.
As much as he wants to grasp, it's all there for him too.
I've never had a Plano box with everything. Like Scott took my box and he put the ceramic rings in one section and he had the bobbers in one section and the rubber bands over here.
His stuff is tight.
Man, I'm like, I love it when Scott plays with my tackle box. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's kind of funny, but no, it's just he's tight. It's very. And that's horrible too.
Super organized.
Super organized.
And I do fish a lot, but usually I am driving the boat, making all decisions where we're going to go, what we're going to catch, training new mates, making sure they do it my way. I'm always happy to have a new mate because they might know something I don't know. I never discourage them from letting me know what they think, but I get excited when I do Into the Blue with Steve, because I know that I get to fish again. And I'm not going to fish and just bob around in the ocean. He's going to put me in a spot where I can catch more fish than I could find my own self. And I get to fish for him. And I go a little gung-ho because I don't want to catch one. I want to catch 10. If you give me 10 poles, I want 10 poles bent over. I don't get that opportunity to do it very often. So when I get time to be with Steve, I know he's going to put me on his mutton spot that I can catch 3 muttons at once if I can hold 3 poles. Or he's going to put me on tunas where I can catch 10 at once.
And you know what else? Scott has no problem with letting me drive, which is huge. You know what I'm saying? Like you would think that, like you said, being a captain and dude's running around in a 65, $3 million rig, he'd be pretty cocky on the fact that, hey, I'm going to run this boat. But he lets me drive whatever. He's never once told me, hey, let me take the helm today. Obviously it's a known fact. If we're in Duck Key, Scotty drives the boat. We're in Key West, I drive the boat. But if we're out somewhere where neither one of us are, it's our home waters or what have you.
I like that challenge the best. Being like in Louisiana, I love that we have a guide here. We couldn't do what we do here without a guide. It's just too much to bring in.
You can do it.
You could drop us out there.
Time.
We would catch.
That's exactly right. You could do it, but not in the time that we need to film this TV show. Like nobody's so good that they can just show up anywhere and all of a sudden be as good as the locals. That's just not happening, right?
Take a couple days.
Yeah, you could drop me and Steve off in any ocean, and we'll be fishing the next day. We're not going to go hungry
with enough time.
He sees water a little different than I see it. He sees a current line. I see a weed line. He sees blue water. I see powder water. And then our eyes are looking and processing it totally differently, but with the same goal in mind, to catch the fish that are living in that water. Or where they're not living, we're not going to waste our time. Mm-hmm. We both have that ability.
I find this to be very interesting right now because, first of all, you guys have just kind of accepted the fact that, it may have taken a little while, and you might have had to fish together a little while to realize this guy brings a lot to the table, and this guy brings a lot to the table. So, when we're bottom fishing, you're listening. When you're bill fishing, you're listening. And do you think that helped you to be better anglers, better guides, fishing together like that? Obviously, you're learning a lot about bill fishing, you're learning a lot about bottom fishing, but do you think it also helps you to realize, like you just said, that you'll listen to anybody? If your mate might teach you something. Do you think your experiences with Steve and realizing, oh, there's this whole other world out here that I hadn't really been paying all that much attention to?
10 years later, I'm even better fisherman than I would have been if I never met Steve. I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah, that's huge, bro. I like it. Yeah, man. No, I think when I look at, when we're fishing, we're doing a drift for sailfish. He's got all kinds of tricks up his sleeve. There's things he's doing nonstop that I never ever would have even dreamt of doing. Scotty's he knows the rigs. He's on the latest and greatest. he's in that circle. That there's a lot happening in Islamorada. I always said that if those Islamorada boys and duck marathon guys, if they came down and competed against the Key West fleet, the charter boat fleet, those guys would their heads would fall off.
It happens every year, right? At the World Sailfish Championship, which you have won, right?
Luckily, yes.
Yeah. Nothing to take away from the Key West guys. We just have awesome fish, but I don't think any of those guys on a big boat even own a cast net. Dude, you drive through the Middle Keys and every single charter boat is drying out their 2 14-foot cast nets.
And they're feeding their baits in the pens.
Yeah.
And while the nets are drying, they're sabiking more.
We got one guy that fishes like them. We got Bryce. I mean, you know what I'm saying? We got one.
Is the man in Key West.
And he came from there. I think he was a mate up that way.
He learned from some of the better boys in Islamorada.
And I don't know what the difference is. And it could be we have an easier fishery. We have an easier fishery.
Yeah, you can go out and buy the ballyhoo right out of the store and put it out and catch a dolphin.
Right. We have an easier fishery than these guys. So maybe we don't have to work as hard. So maybe our and I'm just speaking trolling guys. They didn't have to evolve and it's fat. Like if you walk down the dock, there's at Garrison Bight, there's probably, what would you say, maybe 25 troll boats there or 20 trolling boats.
That's fair enough. Yeah, say maybe 2 dozen. What the heck?
If you ask those guys to take you sword fishing, you'd be lucky if you found 2 of them that he has ever been or even would consider it.
Or even owns an electric.
Oh, absolutely. Or even knows what to do to even where they even bite.
Right.
You go anywhere from Big Pine to Jacksonville and you walk down any other charter boat operation and you said, hey, we'd like to go sword fishing. And they'd be, me, I'll take you. Everybody on the dock has done that and will do that. And I think that's because we have such a massive influx of tourists down there that these people have never been fishing. Right.
Made it easy to be lazy.
They're from wherever, maybe not even this country. And they're like, we just want to pull on fish. Mm-hmm. And so these guys take them out there and they catch some kingfish and some mackerel and some barracudas, and some yellowtail. Boom, made the day. Everybody's happy. Clients could never have been happier. Whereas I think you guys might bump into a few more real
Our
deal.
clients show up with coolers in their trucks.
Yeah, real deal fishermen. Yeah.
There's not too many clients in Key West that show up with a cooler and an expectation.
Oh, there are. I had a bunch of them.
Well, your Marine boys.
Yeah.
Rush.
No, I'm not saying they were my favorite. I was always like, oh.
Well, you were part of the world where they grind.
Yeah.
And if you don't come in with fish, you don't go fishing the next day.
Yeah. It's funny because when you start guiding, it's like you got to show the eyeballs that you can produce, and then as you get good and you have a clientele, then you're like, oh God, what did I do to myself? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to produce. I need to go back to the guy who doesn't want to take anything home.
So, do you think that? How do you? I mean, you guys have both been in this for long enough, and you've seen plenty of people get sour on the guiding business or the fishing business. I mean, the sun is brutal. It's hard on your body day after day after day after day. But you guys seem to have managed to keep a pretty positive attitude, and you also have, like what we just talked about, you have an open mind and you're willing to learn from a lot of different types of people. What do you think the trick is in order to either keep that open mind and keep learning and keep everything fresh and exciting, as opposed to just doing the milk route and getting tired of it and becoming kind of sour?
I think if you love being out there, I think that's the majority of it, and it is very rare that there's something where you can be surprised every day. And I know this might sound cliche, but you really and truly can see something for the first time every day. You might have seen something similar, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? There's some amazing things that take place out there that it changes every day. You can't predict it. And I think with like Scott, with all these new techniques, I think that keeps him fired up. I think the fact that he, okay, we're going to use this O-ring now to put on the hook to hold the ballyhoo, or we're going to do these dredges now with real mullet instead of, whatever the case may be. I think his thing is faster, technical. I think that probably keeps him jacked up, just finding a faster, cooler way or more productive way. I think on my end, it's just the anticipation of what you're going to catch, because, you never know what is going to happen. You know what I mean? It's something different.
Yeah.
Steve stops to smell the roses.
Yeah. Yeah. That I was going to ask whether Steve liked commercial fishing or guiding or hook and line kind of sport fishing better. because when he's commercial fishing, I don't think he's stopping to smell the roses very much.
I hear you. But it's a little more linear for me. Every day is a puzzle that you want to put together, all 500 pieces. And at the end of the day, when you put that last piece in, wow, what an achievement. And then you go home and your child knocks that puzzle off and you got to start all over again every day. I mean, I caught 14 sails yesterday. I'm jacked up to go catch 14 more. Next morning, the water's gone. Where is it?
Bait's gone.
Bait's gone.
Bait's dead.
Wind's blowing.
The puzzle's been destroyed. You got to find the 4 corners every morning and start to get it done.
Absolutely.
And that's how I approach every day. I got to find the 4 corners and then I can get this thing going.
How often do you put the final piece in the puzzle?
Every day.
You do?
Dang,
dude, that's strong.
Into the blue, baby.
Mostly,
Season 11's on the way.
I'm still looking for that third corner.
That's why I'm here.
Well, man, I know that so many people love Into the Blue. I mean, I've had, when I put it out there that I wanted to have people give me their suggestions, I think that you guys are right at the top. And I know for we talk about learning and we talk about, keeping your mind open and learning from other people, and the experience that I've had watching you guys create this show and helping in whatever small way that I can has made me 1,000 times better fisherman. I mean, to watch what both of you are doing and then bring little pieces of that back into my world, whether it's just by principle, like, oh, well, Scott does it this way, and we could kite fish for sharks in the backcountry, or we could, Steve does this, and maybe we could go out there and try that, and sandballing or any of these things, and all of a sudden I take some of these little things back into my world, or maybe it's just I learned how to throw a cast net a lot better, or maybe it's whatever. But watching you guys it's been really incredible. Before I did this, Rich was the offshore guy, and I didn't know much about offshore fishing, but I'm the production guy. So this kind of fell into my world, and it's been really fun. I mean, it really has been. And both of you guys are amazing fishermen, no doubt about it. But what about goals for the future? Scotty, you got some goals for the future?
Keep winning money.
Keep winning money. And just so everybody knows, you're fishing in what type of tournaments and which tournaments?
The season just ended up as summer ends for the white marlins. We never found the right fish this season. But as soon as we leave here, I got to wind down my season in Maryland and get the boat ready to go to DR. This is a new adventure for us. We're going to go chase blue marlins till Christmas in the Dominican Republic. So I've never been, and got a crew hired to take me there and teach me the waters. And then when they leave, it's all me till Christmas.
Wow. So how many billfish do you think you catch a year?
300 or 400.
300 or 400?
Yeah.
Do you tag them all?
No, not anymore. I've really wound that down a little bit.
And those billfish are sailfish, all of them, right?
Sailfish, a few white marlin, and blue marlins next.
And
start
so
racking up the blue ones.
When you're after the money, it's the marlin?
The biggest purses are in the summertime in Maryland and New Jersey. The Calcuttas can get upwards of $4 million. So winning fish would be easy $1 million, $1.5 million. But the sailfish terms in South Florida, which are really driving me crazy lately, or Jimmy Johnson's got a new one in Key Largo that the Hard Rock is back in a guaranteed $1 million.
Wow.
And that's all catch and release. In Maryland, you got to bring them in. You got to show me.
I mean, that's got to get you pretty excited, because that's like
exciting.
All of a sudden you have the
2 hard days against the best of the best, all in a tight little area.
In your water.
And it's in our waters. It's a little north, but I spend enough time there that I feel that I'm got as good a shot as anybody. Just got to find the right rip for 1 hour. That's our motto.
What time of the year does that tournament go on?
That's March. It's prior to the big finale in Key West. They start off in Miami, Palm Beach, and they finish in Ocean Reef in Key West. But there's probably 30 sailfish tournaments, but there's 6 that you really want to be a part of. And you plan on putting $250,000 in to fish those 6. But if you hit it right, you can take it all back.
I mean, that is definitely a different.
It's a lifestyle.
That's definitely a different league than the redfish tournaments that I used to fish in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like a maybe there might have been $1,000 entry fee in one of them, and we had Calcuttas, but there was a four was one of the familiar things that you said, but that would happen. But it would be like 40,000 would maybe be what you could win, not 4 million. What about you, Steve? What you got any goals for the future? Anything that you're working on? Anything that's important to you?
Not just the kids. I got a 9 and 11-year-old, and just trying to get them more involved in the outdoors. Whether it more comfortable with being on the boat, more comfortable with being in the water, doing the hunting and the fishing thing. Just raising those kids right. It's pretty much my priority right now. No really goals, man. I'm pretty happy. Right now.
That's the ultimate goal, in my opinion. That's the ultimate. I don't think you can ever go wrong with that. I mean, that's the most important.
It's pretty safe to say that both of us are in really good places right now.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like everybody's super happy, and the future for End of the Blue is very good. Just making great shows now. We got 4 of the best shows I think we've ever filmed in the last week, and next stop is Key West. Last stop was the Bahamas, and onward.
Yes, sir.
All right, boys.
Keep heading into the blue, baby.
Will you wake up Jake and get them headphones
back? Are you
awake?
Jake, thank you for being part of this, and thank you for getting in there with that swordfish and sharing that story with us. That was truly amazing. If you want to follow these guys, both of them told me today, somewhat confidentially, that they need some more followers on their Instagram. But no doubt, Steve put some really cool stuff on his when he's doing the commercial lobster diving. Those are some really cool posts where you're showing like what you're doing, and I really like that. So, what's your Instagram?
I believe it's at Steve. I don't even
this is
know.
why you don't have many followers.
Exactly.
Oh, my phone's dead. I don't know.
Exactly.
At Steve.Rodger.
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
not
plural.
Steven.
Steven, is it? No, it's
No,
just
it's
Steve.
Steve. Just
It's
Steve.
Steve.
You don't want to be Captain America.
Rodger, Rodger.
Just the dot.
Yeah, no S.
So sometimes we call you Steven. Your wife calls you Steven.
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes we call you Steve. Which do you prefer?
I don't really matter to me.
You have a TV name and a charter name and a family name?
I think I got a family name. It's Steven. I think, it's just, I know she's like serious. When she says Steve, I'm like, oh, I did something really bad. You know what I mean?
Really?
But it's just weird. I don't know.
Seems like Steven would be the more.
I got like so many names. It's like Stevie from my mom. It's Steve from my dad. My wife's Steven. I don't know. I go with all of them. Scott calls me
Stevie.
beep, sometimes. But
you son of a.
yeah, exactly.
You can
And
hear
so
that under my breath.
Steve.Rodger, right?
But
Rodger.
yeah, that's it.
No
That's
S.
it. Nope.
No S.
And what's yours, Scott?
CAPT Scott Walker. And I'll put some fishing on there, especially when I'm traveling.
I think he wants to be a cook.
But you're going to see a lot more. I'm more of a foodie on Instagram. So if you're going to follow me, be ready for a big appetite.
But hey, listen. Today's lunch, Tom and I both drilled you for recipes and whatever.
Absolutely.
Scott's a cook, man. He likes to cook.
When you're away from home, you got to do something.
I think every group needs somebody like Scott. Like you got to have your cook person. Like whenever we go someplace and we're ready, Scott's like, okay, this is what we're doing.
My house Thursday night.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be ribs. We're going to do this. Firing up the green egg. I mean, you're
pizza party.
That's
We're
what I
gonna
always
do
like.
pizzas on the
I
green
always
egg.
like that about Scott. Like a fish comes over the rail, and he's like, "Oh, you are going to be in with some stewed tomatoes," and I mean, he's already thinking about it, man. That's cool, man.
Great joy.
It really does. And you're a good host when you have one of those parties, man. It's a good host because the food is incredible, but you can just see how much you enjoy it. I mean, you really enjoy the whole process.
Job. Thank you for making it available to do it on TV as well. I love my life. I love my wife. I love my house. I love my island. I love my keys.
Man, well, we got to end it right there because
That's a lot of love.
That's if there's any more love that's going to go on, Jake's going to start talking. All right, boys. Thank you.
Thank you, man.